Most people think fatty liver disease is simple. Too many calories, too much sugar, too much weight, fat builds up in the liver gets inflamed, eventually it scars. That is the version most people hear. And it is not wrong. But it leaves out the most important part of the story. Because fatty liver disease is not just about fat, it is about blood vessels, oxygen delivery, vascular remodeling, and a biological process called angiogenesis, the growth and maintenance of your body's microvascular network. And once you start looking at fatty liver disease through that lens, the entire condition stops looking like a passive storage problem and starts looking like something very different. An active vascular failure, happening silently, years before you feel anything. I am Dr. Angio, and today I want to walk you through the hidden story of fatty liver disease. We are going to talk about why the liver is one of the most vascular organs in your body, how fat accumulation becomes a blood vessel problem before it becomes anything else, why the same process that drives cancer angiogenesis shows up here, and what you can do right now to reverse it. If you like science-based explanations that help you understand what is really happening inside your body, make sure to like this video and subscribe. I post new videos every week so you can use knowledge as a form of prevention. Now, before we talk about what goes wrong, let me tell you something about the liver that most people do not fully appreciate, because this matters. The liver is the second largest organ in your body, and it is an absolute workhorse. It filters toxins from the blood, metabolizes drugs, produces bile to help digest fat. It regulates blood glucose levels, makes your HDL and LDL. Stores glycogen, iron, and vitamins A, B, D, E, and K. Produces proteins essential for immune function and blood clotting. Your liver is quietly running a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week detox and metabolic processing facility without asking for anything in return. And here is something remarkable about the liver that most people do not know. Surgeons have at times been able to remove more than 3/4 of the liver. And within weeks to a few months, the remaining portion can often regrow back to its original size and perform its normal functions. No other solid organ can do that. But there are limits to how much punishment the liver can take, and fatty liver disease, if it gets bad enough, can push the liver past the point of no return, to the point where someone needs a complete transplant. And more people are developing it right now. Here is what is actually happening inside the liver and why it is far more than a fat storage problem. The liver has a specialized microvascular network called the sinusoidal system. These sinusoids are not ordinary blood vessels. They are uniquely designed exchange vessels with tiny openings called fenestrations that allow lipids, glucose, amino acids, and signaling molecules to pass freely between blood and the liver's working cells. Under normal conditions, this system is remarkably efficient. Blood flows slowly, exchange is optimized, the liver maintains metabolic balance. But here is where angiogenesis enters the picture. The endothelial cells lining these sinusoids produce nitric oxide, which keeps the vessels dilated and blood flowing smoothly. They maintain those fenestrations that make exchange possible. And they depend on VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, not just to build new vessels, but to stay alive and functional. When that signaling environment is healthy, the sinusoidal system works beautifully. When it degrades, the liver's entire metabolic machinery begins to fail. And check this out. As hepatocytes, the liver's working cells accumulate fat, they physically enlarge. That enlargement is not just biochemical, it is structural. The swollen cells compress the sinusoidal network, blood flow becomes less uniform, oxygen delivery becomes patchy, and certain regions of the liver begin experiencing low oxygen levels even when systemic oxygen levels are completely normal. That mild chronic hypoxia becomes one of the earliest triggers for vascular remodeling and angiogenic signaling. The liver is not just passively filling with fat, it is actively losing its microvascular architecture. Now let me explain how this gets started, because once you understand the metabolic cascade, everything else makes sense. Under normal conditions, adipose tissue safely stores excess energy, but when storage capacity is exceeded, free fatty acids spill into circulation, the liver absorbs them, and simultaneously increases its own fat production. Insulin resistance is at the center of this. In healthy hepatocytes, insulin suppresses glucose output and regulates lipid metabolism, but in insulin resistance, something paradoxical happens. The arm of insulin signaling that should be suppressing fat production becomes impaired, but the arm that drives fat production stays fully active. And it actually gets amplified by the compensatory high insulin levels that develop as the pancreas tries to compensate. So the liver continues producing fat, even while systemic metabolic control deteriorates. And fructose accelerates this process dramatically, because fructose is metabolized almost entirely in the liver and bypasses key regulatory checkpoints. It directly drives fat accumulation, depletes ATP, and generates oxidative stress. This is why sugar-sweetened beverages are particularly damaging. As hepatocytes fill with fat, mitochondria become stressed, reactive oxygen species increase, inflammatory signaling begins to rise. But the most important change, the one that transforms a metabolic problem into a vascular disease, is structural. The expanding hepatocytes distort the sinusoidal architecture, they compress the delicate exchange vessels, they reduce perfusion, and they create zones of hypoxia within the liver tissue. And now, the liver is not just metabolically stressed, it is becoming hypoxic at the microvascular level. And hypoxia is the most powerful trigger for angiogenesis the body has. Here is what happens next. When tissues experience low oxygen, they activate a protein called HIF-1 alpha. This is the master switch that fires in any tissue starved of oxygen, in a healing wound, in exercising muscle, in a growing tumor. HIF-1 alpha drives VEGF expression. VEGF calls in new blood vessels to restore oxygen delivery. In fatty liver disease, this system becomes chronically activated due to persistent low-grade hypoxia from sinusoidal compression. And higher VEGF levels in fatty liver disease correlate with disease severity and fibrosis progression. The more VEGF, the worse the disease. At first, this angiogenic response is trying to help. The liver is attempting to restore oxygen delivery and maintain tissue viability, the same thing any hypoxic tissue would do. But chronic metabolic stress changes the outcome. Instead of organized vascular repair, the kind you get from exercise where new capillaries form in orderly networks that actually improve perfusion, the liver begins producing disorganized, inefficient microvascular remodeling alongside inflammation and fibrosis. The newly formed vessels are structurally abnormal, poorly connected, leaky. They fail to restore proper perfusion. And here is the paradox that mirrors exactly what we see in cancer biology. More angiogenesis does not mean better oxygen delivery. In chronic fatty liver disease, angiogenesis becomes part of the pathology. The liver is building vessels it cannot use, while the vessels it needs continue to deteriorate. That is not random, that is not chance, that is biology. Now, let us talk about what happens as the disease progresses, because this is the part most people do not understand until it is too late. Fibrosis is driven primarily by cells called hepatic stellate cells. In their resting state, these cells store vitamin A and help regulate the liver's extracellular matrix. But in response to oxidative stress, inflammatory cytokines, and hypoxic signaling, they transform into activated cells that produce collagen and scar tissue. And here is what makes this so dangerous. Fibrosis and angiogenesis feed on each other in a self-amplifying loop. As scar tissue expands, it physically alters sinusoidal structure. This worsens oxygen diffusion, hypoxia increases further. VEGF signaling intensifies, more disorganized vessels form. More stellate cells activate, more collagen is deposited, and the cycle continues. At the same time, the sinusoidal endothelial cells lose their fenestrations, those tiny openings that made the liver's microcirculation so uniquely efficient. The sinusoids transform from highly permeable, slow-flow exchange vessels into rigid, less efficient tubes that resemble ordinary capillaries. Blood flow becomes more resistant. Exchange becomes impaired. Portal pressure begins to rise. The progression goes like this: simple fat accumulation first, then metabolic dysfunction-associated steatohepatitis, where the fat accumulation leads to inflammation, then fibrosis, scarring of the liver, then cirrhosis, widespread scarring. And at that stage, you are knocking on the door of a dramatically higher risk of liver cancer and potentially liver transplantation. And here is the alarming part. Most people have no idea they have fatty liver disease until it is caught during a routine physical. Because in the early stages, it is completely asymptomatic. No symptoms. No warning signs. Just elevated liver enzymes in a blood test that prompts an ultrasound. And that is actually good news, because early stages are highly reversible. The liver has an extraordinary capacity for regeneration that no other solid organ matches. But you have to catch it early, and you have to act. Now let me tell you something about the gut that most people do not connect to the liver, but should. Everything absorbed from the intestine enters the liver through portal circulation. Nutrients, microbial metabolites, and inflammatory molecules all arrive at the liver's doorstep before reaching any other organ. When gut bacteria ferment dietary fiber, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, propionate, and acetate. These are not waste products. They are signaling molecules that reduce hepatic inflammation, improve insulin sensitivity, and support vascular health. Butyrate in particular strengthens the intestinal barrier, keeping bacterial products where they belong, inside the gut. When this microbial ecosystem is disrupted, the consequences for the liver are direct and measurable. Dietary patterns high in ultra-processed foods and low in fiber shift the microbiome toward dysbiosis. This increases intestinal permeability. Bacterial products called lipopolysaccharide begin crossing the intestinal barrier and entering portal circulation in quantities the liver was never designed to handle. The liver's resident immune cells respond to this flood by producing TNF-alpha and IL-6, further amplifying inflammation and contributing to stellate cell activation. Three-way system of destruction. Gut dysfunction drives inflammatory signaling. Inflammatory signaling drives vascular dysfunction. Vascular dysfunction drives metabolic dysfunction, which worsens gut dysfunction. Each compartment worsening the others in a feedback loop that grinds forward for years. And here is something nobody tells you about fatty liver disease and your mouth. Certain oral bacteria convert dietary nitrate from vegetables into nitrite, which is then converted to nitric oxide in the stomach and bloodstream. Nitric oxide is critical for maintaining healthy sinusoidal function in the liver. And in a liver, where sinusoidal endothelial cells are already damaged and producing less nitric oxide on their own, this dietary pathway becomes especially important. Which means leafy greens are not just good for your heart, they are directly feeding the vascular infrastructure of your liver. Now, let us talk about what you can actually do, because after everything we have covered, the good news is real. Fatty liver disease is highly reversible in early stages, more reversible than most people realize, and the most powerful tool for doing that does not require a prescription: exercise. Exercise is the single most effective intervention for fatty liver disease, and its effects go directly into vascular biology, not just calorie burning. During physical activity, increased blood flow generates shear stress on endothelial cells throughout the body, including in the hepatic circulation. That mechanical force activates nitric oxide production and improves vascular function. In the liver, it helps maintain sinusoidal dilation, preserve fenestrations, and keep the microvascular network functional. And here is the critical distinction that most people never hear. Exercise-induced angiogenesis is fundamentally different from the pathological angiogenesis driven by chronic hypoxia in fatty liver disease. When you exercise, the new vessels that form are organized, functional, and adaptive. They actually improve perfusion. They connect properly to existing networks. They deliver oxygen where it is needed. The opposite of what happens in fatty liver disease, where angiogenesis produces disorganized, leaky vessels that fail to restore blood flow. Clinical evidence confirms that 150 to 300 minutes per week of moderate aerobic exercise can significantly reduce liver fat even without major weight loss. Brisk walking, cycling, swimming, jogging, interval training, all of them work. Resistance training 2 to 3 times weekly produces similar improvements through a different but complementary mechanism. It improves skeletal muscle glucose uptake, which lowers circulating insulin levels and reduces the metabolic pressure on the liver. When skeletal muscle becomes a better glucose sink, the liver does not have to work as hard to process excess fuel. And check this out. Exercise appears to restore the very repair systems that fatty liver disease damages. Training restores both the number and the function of endothelial progenitor cells, the circulating repair cells that patch damaged endothelium and seed new capillary growth. Exercise is not just reducing fat. It is rebuilding the vascular infrastructure that the disease has been dismantling. Now, diet. The Mediterranean dietary pattern is the dietary approach with the strongest evidence base for fatty liver disease management. olive oil, nuts, fish, legumes, fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. When chronic stress persists from insulin resistance, excess calories, gut dysbiosis, and inflammatory signaling, the liver adapts through hypoxia signaling, pathological angiogenesis, stellate cell activation, and fibrosis. Some of these adaptations are initially trying to protect the liver. The liver is trying to restore oxygen delivery and maintain tissue viability, but over time these responses become maladaptive. The vessels that form are disorganized, the scar tissue is obstructive, and the vascular remodeling that was meant to save the liver begins to destroy it. But every link in that chain is also a point of intervention. Exercise restores endothelial function, stimulates healthy angiogenesis, and rebuilds the microvascular network through organized functional vessel growth. Diet improves metabolic and inflammatory signaling, feeds protective gut bacteria, supplies dietary nitrate for nitric oxide production, and delivers polyphenols that mobilize the body's vascular repair cells. Weight loss reduces hepatic fat flux, restores insulin sensitivity, and quiets the inflammatory cascade that drives stellate cell activation. And pharmacotherapy can amplify these effects for patients who need more aggressive intervention. Fatty liver disease is not just a disease of fat, it is a disease of the liver's vascular ecosystem. A system built on microcirculation, maintained by angiogenesis, and damaged by the same metabolic forces that drive hypertension, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And remarkably, it is a system that can still be rebuilt. I am Dr. Angio. If this helped you understand fatty liver disease in a deeper way, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs it. And if you want me to cover the specific foods that protect the liver or what blood tests to ask your doctor about at your next physical, leave a comment below and I will cover that next.